represents the Attorney General's opinion. These are all my own. Okay, so we're going to be talking about two things very near and dear to my heart, the 14th Amendment and the Real Housewives of New Jersey. I was thinking about what says, women's rights, women's empowerment, and immediately my first thought was Real Housewives of New Jersey. So there will be more 14th Amendment stuff, but in my heart they're equal. Just so I can get an idea, has anyone actually seen The Real Housewives of New Jersey? Yes. Okay. 3 cool people in the room. Is that how I make it? Okay. Well, I'm becoming less and less with this room computer. Okay, so let me just give you an overview of what I'll be talking about. So basically we will be looking at 2 cases that had to do with women's rights, well, I guess the rights of a member of a sex under the Equal Protection Clause. We're going to look at Justice Scalia's dissenting opinion, and then we're going to tear it apart. And then there's going to be some drama in between, courtesy of the housewives. Okay, so this is the text of Section 1 of the 14th Amendment. The Equal Protection Clause is just that last little line I have highlighted. In case you can't tell, that doesn't really tell us anything, which is why there are like 1,000 cases on what does the Equal Protection Clause mean. Also, in case you're wondering, there are 5 sections total of the 14th Amendment, but the other 4 don't really matter. So generally when you have an equal protection case, your garden variety equal protection case is usually going to be about someone or some group saying, we are being targeted by a law because we are members of this particular group, and that's unfair. That's not equal. So let's get a little audience interaction. Can anyone think of a particular group that might bring an equal protection claim? Maybe a group that has been historically discriminated against or looked down upon? You can shout them out.
Native Americans.
Okay, good.
Mexicans.
Okay, so ethnicity generally is one of the most protected classes. Anything else?
Trans people.
Not protected at all. Good try though. Doesn't say anything about whether or not the group deserves protection, just says a lot about the Supreme Court and what they think deserves protection.
Women.
Women, very good. Thank you, Katie. Okay, good. One thing that's kind of funny, the last question I have on here is thought to lack basic mental capacity. I'm not kidding you, when I studied for the bar, in one of the outlines, it still lists women as one of the groups of people who do not have capacity to contract. It says like it's long been disfavored, but they still put it in the fucking book. Okay, our first housewives. This is Jacqueline. She's very fun-loving and outgoing and loves plastic surgery. And this is her sister-in-law, Caroline. Caroline is everything. She's your mother, she's your friend, she's your confidant. She's amazing. She loves family. And one thing that is really sad is Caroline is not talking to her sister Dina, who you all know from season 1. And it's like, Dina, Caroline was totally there for you with the Danielle drama. You know, I mean, you're just going to turn your back on her? So rude. So that's our first little bit of drama. So the first case we're going to be talking about is Virginia versus the United States. So has anyone heard of Virginia Military Institute, also known as VMI? No, that's okay. It's apparently a really big deal. It was founded like 300 years ago and is really prestigious and stuff. I had not heard of it, but whatever, I'll take their word for it. So it's the only senior military college where the students are both military cadets, but they're also pursuing a bachelor's degree. I honestly do not know what they do at like West Point or Annapolis, but apparently right, who wants to guess when this case is from? So this case was brought by a group of women, over 100 women, who had been denied admission solely because it was a male-only school. I should also say it's funded by the state of Virginia. So anyone want to guess when this case came out?
Is it one of those
It's
three?
one of those three, yes.
90s.
Very good. It is the mid-90s. So Virginia Military Institute, extremely old, literally one of a kind. It is the only military college that offers these particular credentials, and it is only open to men until the mid-90s. Probably the main reason Virginia used for saying we can only have men here is because they use what's called the adversarial method. Basically what that means is like it's boot camp, you know, where the teachers, rather than like being teachers like teachers here are up in your face and yelling at you and making you feel worthless, and calling you all sorts of derogatory names. So Virginia said that method is so important, and if we allowed women in, you know, we wouldn't be able to do it because they couldn't do as many push-ups as men could do. So we couldn't say like, drop down and give me 100. We'd have to say like, drop down and give me 80. And, you know, obviously the method just falls apart once we have those considerations in there. They also complained that women would have to get, you know, other special accommodations. For example, you know, there are no tampon dispensers in VMI now, but you start allowing women, you bet your ass there'll be some tampon dispensers around. So these are the types of accommodations that Virginia is complaining about making. I should point out that the United States of America brought the suit against Virginia. So the United States saw this going on, and they were kind of like, come on, Virginia, stop being a-holes. Luckily for us, 5 justices on the Supreme Court agreed with the United States and said, yeah, you know, they don't have that good of a reason to not let women in, so VMI, you need to let women in. And as you all know, as soon as that decision was made, a sinkhole opened up beneath VMI and sucked it straight to hell. No, I'm just kidding, it's still there. Okay, so Justice Scalia dissented. That means he thought that VMI was fine being a male-only, state-supported school. Towards like the end of his opinion, I don't know how much time this guy has on his hands. He went through the VMI handbook and found this like poem or code of conduct or something titled "A Gentleman." I gave you a very small snippet of it here because believe you me, it is longer than that. I just put a few gems up there. I really like the one that a gentleman never discusses the merits or demerits of a lady. So you can't talk about how nice a girl is, or you can't talk about how mean a girl is if you want to be a gentleman. You just have to say, there is a girl. Yeah, so obviously, hopefully reading this, unlike Justice Scalia, who sees this as something like that, you know, he like longs for these types of codes of conduct for men, hopefully most of you will look at this and want to die inside. I should also say that if you're ever feeling like kind of sick, and you know how sometimes when you're kind of sick you want to like throw up, you know, just to like relieve some of the feeling, find a Justice Scalia opinion and it will come. So this is his quote at the bottom, this isn't part of the poem. So he's basically saying that because of the decision to allow women into VMI, VMI will literally be destroyed. Here are his arguments for why he does not think Virginia needs to allow women into the school. So one of the proponents of allowing women into the school said something along the lines of, you know, Virginia doesn't have any school that women can go to get these same credentials or whatever you want to call it that men are getting. You know, there's no VMI for women. And so he correctly says that we've never required an all-men's school to be evened out by an all-women's school, or an all-women's school to be evened out by an all-men's school. However, we frequently do require them to be coeducational. So that's a little odd, but he's an odd sort of fellow. Another argument, Scalia loves these types of arguments, and they actually support his opinion most of the time. Historically, military academies only allowed men. He talks about this as if it were some kind of historical accident, as if fate decided that only men would be allowed to go to schools, and certainly only men would be allowed in the military. He seems to discount the fact that this was due to prejudice and sexism and the belief that women were not mentally capable of, you know, earning a bachelor's degree, and certainly were not physically capable of being in the military. So he'll use these historical arguments a lot because if you're like kind of racist and kind of sexist, historical arguments often work in your favor. And then of course, like I said earlier, his argument is that the adversarial method will fall apart if women are allowed in, and the adversarial method is one of the things that sets the school apart, so it will really be destroying the essence of the school. So then throughout his opinion, he is quoting things from Justice Powell in this other opinion, which we'll get to next. And he's quoting it as if it's supporting his position, and actually goes out of his way to say, I have referred approvingly to this opinion. So this is one of those things, you know, anyone reading the opinion could tell he's, you know, referring to it approvingly. But he feels the need to just come out and say it, which is fine. So as soon as I saw this, I thought to myself, well, Justice Powell isn't an asshole. It seems kind of odd that he would make arguments that would go in favor of Scalia's arguments here. So I decided to do some digging and read Justice Powell's argument from this case. So that's what we'll look at after we talk about Kathy Wakili. This is a terribly unflattering picture of what is otherwise a lovely woman. But this is during her infamous speech argument with Teresa, and Teresa's like, don't say I left my kid unattended. And Kathy's like, I didn't say unattended. I said she was left alone. And Teresa's like, don't get into semantics with me, honey. And Kathy's like, Teresa is cuckoo, cuckoo. So she's in the middle of describing Teresa as cuckoo, which of course I'm sure you all guys already knew that. She also loves baking and is coming out with cannoli kits. I'm excited to get one. Okay. So this is the second case we'll be talking about, Mississippi University for Women versus Hogan. In some way, this is the antithesis to the other case. Kind of a dead giveaway with the name, but this is a women's-only school. Unlike BMI, it's not one of a kind. There's nothing particularly special about it other than it was the first public women's college in the United States, which is pretty cool. And it was a women's-only college until, oh, I know what I should. Who wants to guess when this case was? So VMI, this really prestigious military institute, didn't start allowing women until the late 90s. Anyone want to guess when this one came about? Before or after? How about that? We'll just do that.
Before.
Of course it was before. This was in, I think 1982 is when he shattered the illusion that men couldn't go to college and couldn't achieve, and got allowed into the Mississippi University for Women. I will say he was a nurse, and he wanted into their nursing school. But what I will also say is the school's nursing program was relatively new. It wasn't founded until 90 years after the university itself came about. So it wasn't like Mississippi was only having like a sexist women's school where they could just be like nurses and typists. Regardless, when he applied, they offered him the chance to audit classes, but they would not let him be a degree-seeking student. Although I didn't say this, VMI did not allow women to audit their classes, obviously. Women were not allowed on the grounds. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating. So the reason that Mr. Hogan wanted to go to Mississippi University for Women for nursing was because it was located in his hometown. So that's nice, right? You have a constitutional right to go to college in your hometown. Oh wait, no you don't. So he thought, and I think this is kind of funny, he thought that he needed to go to the United States Supreme Court, which took him 3 years, rather than travel 40 miles to the next state school that offered a nursing program. And as so often is the case, he won, of course. So he was allowed in, and the school is now coeducational. They might have taken for women out of the name even. I don't remember. So Justice Powell dissented, and he did not think that this school needed to allow men in. So remember, this is the one that Scalia said, yeah, I agree with what he was saying. So we're going to look at what Powell said and see if that was the same thing that Scalia was saying. So here, this is Powell. These are going to be all quotes from Powell's opinion. So he's saying, look, this guy's complaint isn't that he's being denied a substantive educational opportunity. It's just that the other schools that are being offered to him are inconvenient. He would have to drive to them or maybe even move. Does anyone remember, was that the complaint in VMI? Or, no, I don't think it was. I think they were actually being denied a substantive educational opportunity. So it seems like Powell might differ a little bit with Scalia. So then we keep reading. So when we deal with the Equal Protection Clause, the Supreme Court makes up a whole bunch of bullshit tests. And intermediate scrutiny is what they call the test that applies to sex-based discrimination suits. So because this was a women's-only college, it's a sex-based case. And so the Supreme Court applied the sex-based test, which is intermediate scrutiny. So Powell does not agree with the application of that test because he says this test was designed to free women from archaic and overbroad generalizations. I can't remember, where did we see archaic and overbroad generalizations about women in a state-funded male-only school? Oh, that's right, in VMI. So it seems like Powell would definitely have a problem with what's going on in VMI because the reason why we created this test to protect women is actually necessary when we look at the VMI case. In this case, one dude wanting to go to college in his hometown, maybe not so much. So again, his argument is that this is just not an equal protection case. He is not being denied an opportunity based on his sex. Mississippi gives him plenty of opportunities to go to a nursing program at a state-funded school. His only complaint is that they haven't given him this opportunity in his home community. And as I suggested earlier, that is not actually a constitutional right. And I know what you're thinking. I know my rights, you know. It's in there somewhere. I don't know where, but it's in there. This one actually is not in there. Okay, now the big two. So this is Melissa here in the white and sequin top dress, and that is Teresa, all in sequins. So Teresa is basically totally jealous of Melissa because Melissa's younger and prettier, let's face it. And Melissa is totally jealous of Teresa because Teresa got famous first. And so Melissa came on Teresa's show and was gonna like upstage her. And Teresa was not having it. They also both love tanning and wearing makeup and sparkly things. Okay. So, going back to lawyerly things, anytime that a judge or an opinion or a lawyer is really like citing a specific source and saying, you know, they agree with me, therefore, you know, you should agree with me. It kind of reminds me of like when a creationist, like, you know, pulls a clip of Richard Dawkins saying something stupid in that context and saying like even Richard Dawkins, the famous atheist, acknowledges that God created man, you know, and it's like, no, he didn't actually say that. So a good skeptic will be able to read these bullshit opinions and double check the sources, because oftentimes lawyers, you know, are trained to lie. We lie at will. Some people would say we're ethically compelled to lie. And then there's people like Justice Scalia who just lie for the fun of it. So it's important to, even with someone who's like a Supreme Court justice, important to really question them and make sure they're being honest. And Scalia, although he is the worst, is not alone in this. Everyone does this. So it's just a good way to practice your skepticism, I would say. Oh my gosh, okay, last but not least. Danielle brings out this book, okay? And this book is about like how she was involved in kidnapping and drugs and all this stuff. And Teresa is freaking out. She presents 3 arguments for why she hates Danielle. One is that she was engaged 19 times. Another is that she was a prostitution whore. And the third is that she's a stupid fucking bitch. So the only remedy Teresa had at this point was to flip a table in Danielle's general direction, at which point they were asked to leave the nice restaurant. So that's actually all I have. Sorry, I know there was a lot of like law stuff, so if there are like any questions, there's someone snapping at me.
I can't clap.
Okay.
I'm recording.
Oh.
Thank you, Maggie. So, if you could compare Justice Scalia's approach at general argumentation, would you say he's more effective than the woman you just described?
It's close. It is close. Because, you know, they both lay out their arguments.
On the floor sometimes.
What?
On the floor sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. And they both take drastic measures. So yeah, they're very similar. I would definitely say Teresa is the Scalia of the housewives, though.
I think the only criticism I have is that you don't have a clip of this
I know. I wasn't sure. I'm always a little iffy on doing videos in this room, or in these types of rooms. I don't know.
There's no escaping.
Oh my God, we could act it out.
You won't. Yeah.
Which,
Do it.
Which scene? The book scene?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The table flipping.
Yeah, that's what we want.
Okay, Seth, which character do you want to be?
I'll be dead.
Oh, okay.
How are you going to flip that
Okay, you
table?
need to put a book.
Figurative.
And keep in mind that there are, also around the table is Dina, Caroline,
Children.
Jacqueline children. They all brought their kids.
Public.
Some of them were like toddlers.
I want to talk about the book. I can't remember what I'm supposed to say, but you were being vindictive, and there was
Something in
hatred.
that book has got to be true. You were engaged 19 times.
It's all a lie.
Prostitution whore.
It's all
You
false.
fucking
I
stupid bitch!
Bodyguard, get my bodyguard. Get me out of here.
Seth is actually mixing up two different seasons.
And scene.